Hi everyone, it is Jenny Henderson from Chrysalis Business Support, and I am delighted to be joined today by Kevin Brent of Biz-Smart. I've known Kevin for quite a number of years, and Kevin's normally the one doing the interviews with people, so I'm turning the tables on him today, and I've invited him on to my episode to interview him. So thank you very much for joining me today, Kevin.
Thank you for inviting me, Jenny. And I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to get a taste of my own medicine, aren't I?
Just a little bit today. Yeah. So just to give everybody a background, Kevin founded Biz-Smart in 2012 with the aim of supporting business owners. And nowadays, it's much more about helping transform business owners' lives and putting them through a number of his programs and his systems under the Flight Academy, which really helps them to scale up their business and develop their business and transform it and not get stuck into what Kevin calls the valleys of death. We might touch on that during our conversation today, but if we don't, I'm going to be putting all the links to Kevin's presentations and his scale up videos in the comments box below. So I do encourage you to go and check those out, because it really is, as we grow our businesses, as we move forward and we're taking those steps in growth, bringing new employees on, there is that danger period that we've got, and it's around how do we navigate those valleys to continue on the upward growth trend of scaling our business up. So typically Kevin works with business owners with 2 to 30 employees as they're scaling up and growing, and he runs a number of programs to help them to do that. I am delighted to work alongside Kevin, and as I said, I've known him for a number of years, and I've been on a couple of his programs recently and some of his events, and I love what he has to say, and I love some of the analogies and the metaphors that he uses to help business owners. So again, delighted to have you with me today, Kevin.
Thank you, Jenny. No, that's great. Delighted to be here. And of course, a lot of it is about building a business that is resilient. And of course, at times like this, then couldn't really be more important than ever, could it?
Yeah, absolutely. So how have things been for you at Biz-Smart? What have you had to adapt to and become resilient to over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, we already delivered some of our programs online, so we're quite used to using online platforms, and we had in fact moved across to Zoom prior to all the problems happening. So we are able to deliver all of what we do online, but of course we're seeing a mix of impacts on different clients. So some of our clients, of course, have been hit harder than others. So we're definitely seeing those effects. But from a Biz-Smart point of view, then yes, we're quite fortunate in that we've been able to move online and continue to support all the clients that we were currently supporting, as well as take on new clients that need help at this particular time.
Absolutely. And how has it helped the owners? What's the impact that the owners have had by being able to continue to do it online?
Well, I think the first thing is, if we'd been just totally reliant on a face-to-face model and even a one-to-one model, then I think that would have been a much harder transition for us to do. But a lot of the way that we work is by working with peer groups. So we match up like-minded business owners together and we work as groups. So and that doing that online helps to make those sessions really interactive, and we're not just reliant on a one-on-one type relationship. So I think that's made a big difference. And one of our kind of founding principles, which is beautifully put into words with an old African proverb, is that one about if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that really sort of established that's pretty much what our philosophy is within Biz-Smart. So working with business owners to support each other under a structured program that means that we are looking at the key principles that we need to do to be able to scale up our business, but also to build a valuable business so that it's something that will give us options at some time in the future. Because if we're building a business of our own, then it shouldn't really just be about creating a job for ourselves. We need to be building it as an asset in its own right. And for many of us, it's either our main asset, or should be, or certainly maybe just second to our house. So we should think about it in the same way as building the equity in our house, really.
Yeah, fantastic, great. And how has what challenges do you think business owners have seen over the last couple of weeks then that they've really had to overcome?
Well, I think they're probably fairly well known and very very varied, aren't they? I mean, we're all suffering all sorts of challenges. Clearly, the major one is that we can't meet face to face, and but equally we're seeing even businesses that technically would be able to carry on. Sometimes it's problems in their supply chain that mean that they can't do things. So it's not just about your immediate business and whether you can have your staff in business or not, but it's also about whether your suppliers can do the same. But of course, the big problems are around the financial side of things. If we know that we're losing a chunk of our income, and what how so the immediate reactions, of course, the things that everybody needs to do first of all, once they'd got out of the panic mode, the kind of like oh shit mode, if you like, if I can say that on
I'm
on
sure
this,
we can.
on your is then okay, the immediate things about okay, well, let's have a look at that, let's have a look at the cash flow, let's make sure that we do what we need to do to protect it. So the first thing, and I think most businesses have gone through this already, we're at the point now where most should have already done this, but it's that but it's not just about survival, and I think that's what we're starting to see now, is that many business owners have got out of the hibernation mode. There are some that still need to just hibernate, and that's really the right thing for them to do. But others are starting to look forwards now. And on the money side, then again, you want to make sure that you're not just coming out of this having just scraped through and you've reached the bottom of your barrel. Again, I'm going to end up with all sorts of sayings on this, but there's that one, isn't there, about you don't wait until you're thirsty to dig your well, right?
Absolutely.
So put everything in place now. We're likely to be in some form of lockdown and social isolation for some significant time, and depending on what sector you're in, that will be longer for others. And certainly within simple networking type businesses, we're probably imagining that we're not likely to be meeting up in groups of 20, 30, 40 people this year. I would be surprised. So for some businesses, we need to be certainly thinking this is the new norm. So let's not just run our cash reserves dry, and then when we need money, think about okay, let's try and find some now. Let's think about it now. Make sure that we're in a situation where actually we do have some reserves for when we need them.
Yeah. Do you think there was a mentality of obviously there was the panic situation, all of a sudden we within a 24-hour period things had drastically changed in our world, but obviously we were told initially 3 weeks. So do you think there was almost that kind of like, oh, we'll be out of this by whenever, and all of a sudden a little bit of reality has now kind of come in with people going, oh, actually this is going to be a little bit longer than we maybe first thought, and maybe we now need to start doing something. We need to start taking some action now, because we thought we could hang on for a couple of weeks just moving along and doing what we need to do, and we could furlough staff and just look after the cash flow, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks, don't you worry, we'll be back. And actually now Absolutely. The realization has set in. Now we need to start building those foundations, start moving forward again.
I absolutely. I think that's you've summed it up absolutely. I think there was certainly that period of denial, wasn't there, before it actually locked down properly. Certainly and I think a number of other people were thinking, oh, is this really going to be as big as people think it is? And as you say, it was like a light switch being switched off, wasn't it, initially? And I think you're right. We thought that most of us probably thought the light switch would come back on again quite quickly. It isn't going to be like that. It's much more like a dimmer switch, isn't it?
Yes.
except it went off at once. Yeah, it went right down, but it's going to come up. Yeah, exactly. So yes, and I think we have to, if we haven't already in our businesses started thinking about the fact that things are not ever going, certainly not going to go back to normal quickly, and I think there's a big question mark about what normal is now. I personally, I don't think we will ever go back to the norm that we had before. So we need to be thinking about that in our businesses. and what does that mean for us? So we've got to do that little bit of trying to envision things in the future, do that bit of blue sky thinking, see how that changes things. But there's also the thing, you know, we mentioned houses earlier on, but there's that idea, and I think it's quite helpful if you imagined, God forbid, that your house was burnt down to the ground. Everybody's fine, nobody's hurt, but your house is burnt down or severe structural damage. You've got all your insurance money to rebuild it. Would you rebuild your house exactly the same as it was? Now, I would imagine that unless you've literally just built the house of your dreams, you probably wouldn't. All of us would probably think, oh, you know what, actually, I might build roughly the same sized house, but I'd do it quite differently. And the same applies to our businesses now. And it's a great time to do that bit of thinking if we haven't done already. And even if things start to come back to some semblance of normality, do we want to build our business and just get back in the same way? Because we're going to suddenly, if that does happen, we're going to get the pressure again of being busy. Now, some businesses are very busy now, but those that aren't, we're going to again be back in the rat race in a way, if you like. We're going to be at the beck and call of clients. Well, now's the opportunity to take stock and think, actually, you know what? I've built my business up over a number of years. I started really small. I've sort of added bits here and patched it up and built a kind of a patchwork of the business. It all works. It worked really well. But actually, you know what? If I started from a blank piece of paper with everything that I now know, would I do it the same, or would I take the opportunity to do something different? And I think that is a really good process to go through right now.
Absolutely. It's almost, it's almost like wiping the slate clean, isn't it? It's almost like having that blank bit of paper and saying, what is my vision? What is my ideal dream business? Yeah. And you may have been close to it before. You may have, actually got to a certain stage, but it wasn't quite right. But now is the opportunity to really kind of start rebuilding and looking at it. And I absolutely agree with you. I've had to make a massive mental switch in when I keep saying, when we go back to normal. And actually, I am 100% with you on that. There's no going back to normal. Our normal that was doesn't exist. The normal that is now is here, and the normal that will be in the future will be the new normal, but it will be a different normal to what we're, and all these great innovations that I'm hearing of people doing, and different ways of them reaching their target market, different ways of them looking at their routes to market. It's almost like they're an addition to what they were doing before. They're not an alternative to what they should be doing in the future. Right. And it's almost like when we come, when we move out of this, it's building a stronger foundation, isn't it? It's about bringing on different ways and routes to market that they might not have thought of before, that this has given them the opportunity just to have to think outside the box a little bit.
Yes, and the beauty for those of us that started up our businesses, a little while back, the beauty, of course, is that we've got all the benefit of that experience. So it's not like we're starting a brand new business having never done one before of the type of business that we're trying to build in the sector that we're trying to build it. We've got all that knowledge. We've got client contacts as well. We've got all of those things, and if we look at it actually as a positive thing, in that we now do have that opportunity to reframe. It's not all just problems and difficulties. There are some real opportunities out there. I think it's a great opportunity to build a business with the right principles of building, on strong foundations, and a lot of the things that we talk about with business owners, we encourage business owners to think about in terms of building a valuable business. They link back to being a resilient business, a stable business in the first place, that's well run, well structured. And of course, we are seeing businesses at the moment, the ones that perhaps weren't very disciplined and weren't very structured in the way they built the business, but they had they just ran on the back of a great opportunity. Those are the ones that are struggling potentially right now. The ones that built their business with some good solid foundations, and also that have built a business that's got a strong differentiation about it. And that's one of the real principles that we try and get businesses to think about is, what makes you different? What are you can you be the best at? And, why would somebody want you rather than somebody else? And how can we build and build and build on that strength, even if we can't get IP or a patent? But what can we actually do to make sure that that's what Jennifer Henderson and Chrysalis stand for. That's why I should use them. Those businesses have got a bit more of a chance of success at this time. And actually, yes, it's a worldwide crisis, but there are plenty of very well-known, very successful businesses that have started in crisis periods, whether it's been periods of depression or whatever. There's countless examples of big businesses that have made a success, and actually it is partly because if you can make a business work at a time of crisis, then it will work when things go really well, and in fact it will work really, really well. If you've got a business that just about works in good times, it's probably not going to work very well in a crisis.
Do you think, as in the SME market, so looking at the type of business owners that you're working with within that 2 to 30 bracket, it's very much the SME, small business, entrepreneurial owner. Do you think we have an advantage at this time because of the adaptability that we can bring? I was we were talking the other day, and I can't remember whether it was with you or whether it was with somebody else, but somebody came up with the Charles Darwin quote about the survival of the species is not the fittest, it's not the most intelligent, it'll be the people that can adapt the most that will survive. And I have a real sense that, for business that can adapt, and as we can change quite quickly to that adaptation, there is a better opportunity than if you've got a big board where you have to go through multiple layers to make decisions and do things. Yep. And there's a great opportunity, I think, at the moment for the small business owner market, isn't there, to really
there is thrive. I mean, there's certainly that oil tanker kind of thing of big, trying to change the direction of an oil tanker with big businesses. So yes, we do, and again, paint another picture, but certainly the thing we don't want to do is freeze. So there's if you're climbing your mountain and you're on the north face of the Eiger or something, and the last thing you want to do is freeze. Look down or whatever and go, oh shit, I can't move.
Can't go up, can't go down.
But what you do need to do, yes, you up straight up might not be the right route now. It might be for some of us that we do need to come back down a little bit. So maybe we need to scale down or refocus. And that's a key thing actually that I think we could talk about. Or it may be that, as you say, we need to just move sideways a little bit. But actually, I'm not so certain that we've got to be a bit careful, because we're still trying to climb that mountain. Now, if we're rebuilding the house, we might actually redefine that a little bit, I guess. But for most of us, what we need to be doing is to be holding true to what it is that we're trying to build, and remember that. But probably we do need to focus back down again, and it comes back to that differentiation aspect that I was talking about. The temptation now is to go, oh, I could make a bit of money over here because I've not got much money coming in, so I could add to that, and I could do that, and I could do that. Now, all right, I understand that, and I understand the temptation, and it might be that you hit on something and it's great. But actually, the best thing to do is to really think back. Okay, so again, what are we trying to build here? Where are we trying to get to? What is it that we stand for, that we're about, that we're trying to help our customers with? And actually then refocus down to a smaller niche. That actually is the way that many business owners now are finding a way to survive and become bloody brilliant at that particular thing. As long as the niche is big enough, not a niche of necessarily only one customer in it or something, but as long as that niche is sufficiently large, but go right down and become known for what you can do within that. So you are the go-to place, the must-have for that particular niche. And once you've got that working, then again, maybe over time we can start to expand. But if we start pursuing all sorts of opportunities at the moment, Well, then it's that jack of all trades, master of none, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It becomes the scattergun approach, and then you just end up with, you know, not getting what it is that you truly want, and before you know it, you're in a rat race. You're just in a wheel of just churn, and
So
then you're even more
so
disappointed.
if you've got a big business,
Yeah,
reasonable sized business with multiple product and service lines, all sorts of things going on, the chances are the time now is to prune. It's to have a look and go, okay, which are the profitable lines within that, and which are the ones that actually, in a way, we just kind of diversified into over time. What can we come back to, and focus on that, and not be diverted by trying to chase all of these things, continue with things that just actually are losing money. Yeah.
Reminds me a little bit of the Andy Bounds book, The Jelly Effect.
Oh, not sure I know that one.
That one. It's to do with communication, but it's very relevant to what we're talking about. So his premise is that it's called the jelly effect, and it's almost like taking a bucket of jelly, throwing it at a wall, and seeing what sticks.
Right.
What bits have stuck. And it was to do with communication. You know, I'm sending out all this communication, and I'm going to throw it at the wall, and hopefully one of my messages will stick to somebody, but there'll be a whole load of others that the message will just bounce off of, and it'll just be an effect, you know. So again, it's, you know, it's almost that way of, right, again, focus in, you know, look and see what you can actually do and do well, and really become the expert and the go-to person in that field. And that, you know, again, just, yeah, brilliant. Cool.
Very good.
So so what else is going on? So what would we've given so much advice here on people with everything to do with what they should be doing. What would be a key takeaway that you would want a business to know from our conversation here today? What kind of what practical things could they be doing and looking at and should be doing for their business?
Well, I you know, assuming we've done all of the practical things about managing the cash flow, and as I say, part of that, I think, is the focus side of things. So looking at where we're making money and where we're not making money. Spend that time on reframing where we want to go. But then once we've got that, what we need to do is to really start to get the discipline going as to how we can make that happen. So one of the things that that we encourage business owners to do is to have a 90-day planning cycle. So it's great to have. We do need the long-term picture, and it's a bit hard right now to think much beyond the end of our nose, but let alone in sort of 10 or 15 years time. But it's great to have at least that rough idea as to where we're getting to in 10 or 15 years time. And fine, you know, we'll all talk about then having a 3-year kind of base camp, and then a one year what we really want to do this year. But if we can do it that way and then break it down into 90-day sprints, we often refer to them in sprints, similar to the anybody in the software world would be absolutely familiar with the idea of sprints, where we might have a week where we sprint on these particular projects or development projects. Whereas what we're saying is, let's break down where we're trying to get to in a series of quarterly sprints of 90 days, and a really good robust exercise for doing that, but identifying essentially for the business what are the handful, and I mean a handful, I don't mean 20 things, I mean literally 5 to 7 priorities that we must achieve this quarter as a business within the next 90 days that will get us towards where we're trying to get to for the year, which will get us, right? So that 90-day planning, but then not just doing it at that level, because we want to be reasonably specific about what those are, but then, okay, what does that mean for each of us? Let's just take the senior leadership team, if we've got a senior leadership team. So if those are the priorities for the business, what then become the priorities for Jennifer? So what's Jennifer's 3 to 5, so we get a smaller number, but 3 to 5 priorities that link back to the business priorities, and we often call those rocks. To use the terminology, you may be familiar with the idea of the time management of trying to fill a jar. Have you come across that? Yeah, with the rocks, the pebbles, the sand. And there's always time for a beer at the end of the day, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Always room for a beer, anyway.
Yeah.
But that's the idea of the rocks. Is what are the big things that each of us need to achieve, and then break those down into a few actions. So that's the being really clear on that, because what we need right now if we're going to succeed now as a business, is we need that focus and that clarity. So we need the direction, and we've got to establish that reasonably quickly again. If we haven't got it, if we've lost it, we've got to then get that focus and that clarity as to what that means. But then we've got to really break that down so that everybody understands what that means to them within the business. We've got to communicate that, and we've got to get alignment within everybody. And then we've got to have the discipline, the communication. We call it the business rhythm, but we've got to get the rhythm within our business. It's essentially a communication rhythm that then means that we can help people to keep on track with what we've just set as the priorities. So if we've got our quarterly 90-day priorities, what are we going to do monthly? Do we get together on a month and review those priorities? What are we going to do weekly? Do we have a different kind of approach weekly, where maybe we take each other through progress on those rocks, as we've called them, and any help that we might need? Do we even need a daily rhythm? Many businesses, especially at time of crisis and change, or rapidly growing businesses where things are changing daily, we actually need a daily huddle type aspect. So that idea, but that structure, that clarity, that focus, alignment, and the communication then which is effectively the discipline, the habits that we create in the business to make sure that we are actually moving towards where we want to get to. So those are really practical things that people can do.
Brilliant. Is there any psychological or science behind 90 days? Why 90? Because breaking down the year into the quarters, I guess. But is there anything in the science behind why 90 days works best?
There probably is. I'm not sure I know it. If there is, what I do know is it works.
Yeah. So from your experience, from what you've taken people through.
Yeah, and in a way, it's like some people will have a 5-year business plan, some will have a 3-year business plan. Yeah. In a way, it doesn't really matter. It's what works for you. The years break down nicely into the quarters. It does work psychologically. Okay, there's 4 sprints for us to achieve what we want to do. You could do it in a different number of days, but I think those quarters work quite nicely. And as I say, we've been doing that with businesses that we work with for a number of years now, and the ones that really take that on board and approach it in a proper, focused way, what you see is that they make significant progress. And if you look back then, after a year, let's just say, they're much more likely to have achieved those goals and objectives that they've set themselves, and businesses that don't. Because what tends to happen is, and this is what we try and get business to think about, and with the scale-up journey, about those series of stepping stones and the valleys that we talk about. When we build our businesses, it's not just a drift. We don't, even if we've got a long-term aim, we're not just gradually sort of drifting towards it and it's nice smooth growth, or it's even wiggly line growth. Actually, it's a series of steps. Because if we're building our business, and it depends what kind of business we're trying to build, but if we're trying to build a one-man business or one-woman business, then that's great. And we can build that. It might be a highly paid consultant, and that works really, really well if that's what we want to do. But actually, if we want to have a team of people, and that next pillar we talk about is between 3 and 5 employees, it's a different pillar, or different, we call them, the ladders, if you like. So if we climb the ladder of success for a one-person business, that's great. We can get to the top of that, but actually, it's a different ladder from the 3 to 5 business. So, but the idea of think about your business as a series of steps. I've forgotten exactly why I started down this path, but that's that's what we try and get business owners to think about, and then that's helping you to get to where you're trying to get to.
And I know you're a key proponent of actually documenting that then, and making sure that there's, it's not just in the business owner's head or down. It's actually documented with, key points, key critical numbers. What do you want to achieve this quarter? What would make a good quarter? What would make an okay? And what would make a bad? Because I think, does that give more focus? Does that help the people to narrow in on what is important to them?
Yeah, I mean, what we're not advocating people to do is to write some long-winded strategic document, business plan. That's not what it's about. What it's about is, it's first of all, it's about the thinking. It's about the approach, and doing the thinking in the right way. It's then around capturing that, but in a way that then enables you to communicate that and share that and build it into a habit. That's the important thing. So for some people, that might be writing it on a piece of paper. For others, it might be having it in software. But it's not a detail. It's not a book. We're not writing a book here. We use effectively a one-page type framework to do those 90-day plans. We do have some software as well that backs that up, but it's around keeping it simple. And it's those, so when I talk about those priorities, and as Ryan said, we want 5 to 7, or maybe even sometimes it's 3, but it's not 20, because it's not a to-do list. And this is the mistake that some people might make originally. These are the rocks. They are not the pebbles, then they're not the sand. Those things you do as day to day, and most people's business rhythms, when we have meetings within businesses, most of those are tactical, and they're about the pebbles and maybe the sand. They're about the day-to-day operations. What we often miss are the rocks. What were the big things? We said that in 12 months' time, we want to be in a position to be able to franchise our business, for example. So if we want to be in that position in 12 months' time, what do we need to do this quarter that moves us forward to be able to franchise, a step closer to being able to franchise our business? And then in quarter 2, what do we need to be able to do? So that's what it's about, really.
Because as we know, life, it goes so fast at the moment, and I find that even being in lockdown, weeks are disappearing underneath us, and before you know it, another quarter's disappeared, and you've kind of not achieved what you thought you might have done in that quarter. And in the end of the year, you kind of look back and go, where did that year go? What happened here? We were supposed to have all these plans and things that I wanted to do, and we've not got there because life overtook us, or, as you say, the day-to-day things sort of suddenly came out, and you've not put the position in place, you've not put the process in place to achieve it.
And if we talk about resilience and in times of crisis, so the businesses that we're seeing that are doing well right now, yes, of course, there's sectors that are much better than others, right? There are some sectors where it's been very difficult. So if you were dealing in the pub sector, then all right, that's a real challenge. But equally, if you were dealing in home baking bread at home, or home exercise equipment, then all right, you've got a wave that you can ride on. Okay, so but just taking those aside, there are a lot of businesses in the middle ground where things haven't collapsed completely, but equally they're not absolutely fantastically rosy that we've got business falling over it to get to us. The businesses that are surviving in that sector are the ones that took quick action, first of all, in terms of getting all of the cash flow side of things correct. But then they're the ones that have got a good bit of leadership within there. So they have got that clarity. They've thought quickly, they've reacted, as you said, they moved quickly to reframe where they need to. But then they've put in place that discipline and that structure. We've got people working remotely now, whether they're furloughed or whether they're working just remotely at home. The business and the communication becomes really important. So keeping people, helping people to understand what their priorities really are, so that we can achieve those. They're the ones that are coming through, and but it is a little bit more than that, because if some of these things it's a little bit late to suddenly do right now, but the ones that clearly are doing okay are the ones that had got that strong differentiation. We call it monopoly control in sometimes when we're talking with clients, but that's a little bit of a misnomer, because it doesn't mean that you've got a total monopoly in your sector. I mean, it'd be great if we did, but those are obviously rare. But if you've got that really strong differentiation, then not only does it mean that people can understand what you're about and see what you can do for them, but it makes you more referable. It's easier to refer. If I know that actually somebody does mastermind groups with digital marketing agencies, that's quite rather than just mastermind groups, that's really great. So if I see a digital marketing agency, then I'm going to kind of say, okay, that's what they do. So those things, so that really strong differentiation is great, but it also means we've got a little bit more flexibility on the pricing. If we're not so commoditized, then it's not going to be a race to the bottom, which of course is happening in some sectors right now. Is that, but there is something else that goes with that, I think, which is quite key, is some businesses have got a strong element of recurring revenue. Now, all right, not all of that will continue because some of our clients that we've got on recurring revenue may well be in sectors where they've got real difficulties. But if we've got a recurring revenue model where we know that every month the majority or all of our overheads are covered before the month starts, clearly that's fantastic. Everybody, whether you've got recurring revenue or not, can imagine that will be fantastic. And it is possible to create recurring revenue in whatever sector you're in. Obviously, it's more obvious in some than others. If we're an IT software provider, it's kind of the norm to do that. And normally in sectors like HR, it's kind of the norm. There's a monthly retainer. But in other sectors, it's not. But if you can find the way, and it goes really with what's a differentiation, what do we stand for? What are we really different? What differentiates? And can we build some element of recurring revenue within that? Then that is a really good place to be. We're going to build a business for the long term that's resilient. Then great. But unfortunately, it's not normally a quick thing. It normally takes a while. Having said that, I did interview somebody the other day who runs his name called, he's Wasim. He runs Waz's Bistro. Give him a little bit of advertising in Bromsgrove, and he obviously can't. He creates a whole dining experience. It's great. It was great to talk to him. Actually, he's really enthusiastic, passionate about the experience that he's created. And he does language sessions as well within the dining. It's a Mediterranean feel type restaurant, but you can come and you can learn French while you're dining. So you can have that kind of. You can almost. It's almost like being abroad on your holiday and having conversations. But he also gets the children to get involved in helping to make the prepare the meal from fresh ingredients and things like that. But he can't do that right now in that form. But what he can do is he can think, well, that's what we're about. It's creating an experience. How can we do that now, given that we can't have people come into our restaurant? So he's putting together a whole range of his special Waz's recipes that do this, but ingredients in a box kind of idea. But supported with YouTube videos. I don't actually know if he's building the language side of things into that. But so that then would be a subscription type model.
In
a way, he certainly could build that into where you could have a meal a week or something like that. So that could turn around quite quickly. But often it takes quite a lot of thought for a business owner to find that right, because we don't just want to go, well, I'm going to charge you a subscription now, so I want to go on a retainer. Well, people hate the word retainer. It's going to. If you want to switch off a potential client, mention the word retainer. But if you think it through, and you're really strong about what makes you different, and if therefore that's what makes me different, what would really add value to the client, and what might be a recurring model, a repeating type model on that, then there would be a way to do it in every sector. But like I say, it's not another, it's one of those light switches again. It's not the bulb, the switch might go on, but the bulb will come on a little bit later, I think.
A little bit of a time lag as it kind of it goes up. See, you've got me thinking of your restaurant guy now, and Waz. I said, imagine if then once a month he had everybody round the table. They all came to a Zoom meeting where they all had the dinner.
Absolutely,
you could have the group dinner with everybody having made that recipe of the month, and then they're all in this virtual environment where they're having dinner together.
Yeah, and if you're really adventurous, let's talk French for the starter, and let's talk Italian for the main course, and and here's a wine that you should choose as well. You could do that. Absolutely. There you are. We've just so I hope Waz is going to listen. I hope Waz is going to listen to this. but yes, if you think like that, but it comes from what he's passionate about, and what made it do it. It's not just a restaurant where he's taking your money for having a plate of food. That's not what he's about. He's created that whole experience, that Mediterranean feeling as if you're on holiday in a foreign country kind of experience with lovely food, lovely atmosphere. Can't do that now the way I was doing it. How can I help people to recreate that in their own homes? Well, if you start with that thinking, you will find ways. Just like if you start with the thinking that I don't. Online is the way. If you start with it being short term and you think actually I've just got to do online meetings short term, fine, that one. But if you start with thinking actually, you know what, this might be here for a while. So online is different from face to face. There are advantages of face to face. There are advantages of online. What are some of the things with the current face that we prefer about face to face that we can't currently do online? Actually, is there a way that we can then do that online? So rather than saying, well, I'm a bit resistant to moving online, it's like, well, if we had to, if we could only move online, do our support online, how could we make that experience as potentially wonderful face to face? And that's what WAS is starting to think about doing, and that's what we can all do. And things like what you're doing here, but also the functionality of things like breakout rooms within Zoom mean that you can create those intimate experiences, but also have the big group session part of it, so you can move people in and out from plenary type sessions. So if you imagine going to a big conference where you're all sat in the big hall, got the speaker, everybody benefits from that, and then you go out to a breakout room with maybe 10 or 15 of you or less, and you then discuss the whatever it is, the topics of that, but then you come back again to for the next. Well, you can do all of that online and create the same kind of atmosphere if that's what you want to do.
And it was great. I mean, I attended your Scale Up Club last Thursday, and I've never been able to get to a real live one, a face-to-face one. I always clashed with something else, so I really struggled. And I think the one that I was due to attend to in January was cancelled because of floods, so we had to adapt to the flooding in Worcester that we had. And then obviously now with the pandemic, you've had to move all the Scale Up clubs online. And again, that worked beautifully. We started off with the big group, and then we all went out into our little breakout rooms. And I had 6 people in my little breakout room, run beautifully by Louise of your team. And we were able just to have that little bit more in-depth conversation away, where we could put actions in place and come out with some activity that we would commit to, and come back to the main room and wrap it all up. And it worked beautifully. It really does.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it can. But I think you have to think about it, because if we just said, well, let's just do it online, we've probably all been, well, before even online stuff, we've all been in meetings that we wonder why, what's the point of this meeting? Who's actually running the meeting, and why am I here? But it's the same with Zoom or any of the other Teams or whatever else. If the meeting isn't thought through itself, and we've got the right people there, and we've got the structure for it to achieve whatever it is that the aim of that session is, then it won't run very well. And I've certainly already attended a number of sessions where you just think, oh, okay, this is not great. But if you've got to keep people's attention a bit more with online, haven't you? So if you break it into short sections, move people around the breakout rooms, that's quite fun. Random breakout rooms. I mean, you can allocate it. You can allocate it random, which is great. So you got 50 people or something, and you can rotate 3 or 4 breakout rooms, and you get to meet most people in random rooms. Great. But if you give a structure, so it's not just let's go and have a chat for 10 minutes in a breakout room, but it's actually, this is what I want you to talk about, and I'd like you to come back with some takeaways. Right, now you've got a bit of a structure, and actually you can combine things as well. So with the 90-day planning workshop that we did, so we did the first one of those online, and I think if I'd said to most people before that, we're going to do a 7-hour session online, you go, what?
Yep.
All right. Well, that worked beautifully. We had 7 hours of productive time. We did have an hour's break for lunch, and we had obviously breaks in between. But what we did was we combined the online with the physical, because we were able to send out, we were able to get printed and sent out workbooks, essentially, so that we could have a structure that we followed. So we had a very clear structure to the day, which was the same as when we did it face to face, but doing it online then allowed us to do that again with breakout rooms, keep people's attention during all of that time, and everybody was there for that whole 7 hours, and it worked beautifully. And that, so once a quarter, taking the idea of taking time out with your team, ideally not just you as the business owner, but if you've got a team, especially if you've got a senior leadership team, then do that together, because then you're going to be really, not only would you get better priorities coming out for the business, because you've got more heads thinking about it, but also they will be aligned to it. It won't be just a case of me telling you that's what I want you to do. We've agreed what it is, and then when we break it down, okay, so if that's what we want to achieve, then what's my bit? What am I going to do specifically within that, and what am I going to own of those? Really, Jennifer, what are you going to own? And if you do that once a quarter with your senior team, then you've got that, and you are free from distractions. You're going to achieve. We've seen it happen, and I genuinely think businesses that do that well will achieve more in 90 days than they would otherwise have achieved in a year, or that most businesses would achieve in a year.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
All right.
Kevin, we've given so much value to these people today. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's been fabulous. Thank you. Really appreciate you taking time out.
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't too bad being on the other side today.
No, it's great. Thank you. And I think you've just discovered that if you get me talking, you can probably get me talking all day. So.
Well, again, we talk about that passion and purpose, and I think that's what happens when people are passionate about what they're trying to do. When you've got that purpose, that's when you're in flow, and that's when things start to come out. And I know that about you. I know that you have got that passion for helping business owners and a true purpose for Biz-Smart and what you're wanting to achieve.
And I do genuinely believe that we have helped some of the businesses we work with to transform their business lives, but also but not just the business lives, really, because obviously it impacts on everything. Good.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have enjoyed that. In the comments below, I am going to be putting the contact details for Biz-Smart, and I'll be putting up when their next Scale Up Club is in May, and also the next 90-day planning day that they have got in June. And I do encourage you to check those out and see if you can attend and book onto them. Kevin also has some amazing giveaways that he has. He's got a podcast that he runs on a weekly, monthly basis.
Weekly, Scale Up Radio.
Yeah, so Scale Up Radio.
You'll be able to listen to that interview with Waz from next week, from Monday.
Perfect, excellent. So sign up to the Scale Up Radio and make sure you're on the mailing list to get those. And also there is an app. There is a Biz-Smart app, and it is full of great content, really good hints and tips. So if you go onto any of the Google stores, app stores, or the Google Studios, you can find the Biz-Smart app, and I do encourage you to download that. I've got it on my phone, and there's some great articles and some great tools and tips on there as well for business owners. So there is no excuse for not taking action and doing what you need to do for your business. So again, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. And guys, I will see you very soon.